And we start with the reopening of schools. We want to look at second day. How was it of reopening of schools after a period of almost 2 good years? It was the second day of first term after government instructed primary, secondary and pre-primary to open school. It should be remembered that all schools and institutions of learning were closed 2 years after a number of students contracted COVID-19 and the cases were high. UBC visited some of the schools to ascertain how they are upholding SOPs to ensure that they avoid the spread of COVID-19. By 10 a.m., we were at Nakasero Primary School, a government-aided school, where pupils were out for break. Hand washing, wearing of face masks, checking of temperature, among other standard operating procedures were important, with the sick bays and isolation rooms reserved to distance students or pupils who have related symptoms to COVID-19. However, we found 2 students, names withheld, resting in the sick bay, and the nurse Margaret Nankumbi Kalanzi explained about their health condition. The concern of little-aged pupils, that is from P3 and below, keeping their face masks on full-time is almost an impossibility, and this is what is puzzling the teachers on how best they can move forward, since they find it very inconveniencing and decide to remove them or keep them at the chin.
Still on the reopening of schools following over 2 years in the lockdown COVID-19 pandemic, finally, government has reopened schools with a call to educationists to comply with the SOPs to prevent the spread of COVID-19 pandemic. Now, State Minister for Higher Education, Dr. John Muyingo, and Ministry of Education officials did visit schools in Kampala and Wakiso districts to monitor the observation of SOPs. Now, the turn-up of learners to schools in just 2 days after 2 years of COVID-19 lockdown has pleased officials from the Ministry of Education, led by State Minister of Higher Education, Dr. John Muyingo. Now, the minister and officials visited UPE and USE schools where learners had turned up and the teaching was in progress. Although in some schools there was a poor turn-up and some teachers seemed not to be ready for the reopening. State Minister also and the officials did visit Chitante Primary School in Kampala, Chira Primary School and Chira Secondary School in Wakiso District. He said that the visit was to monitor compliance with the standard operating procedures.
Now, away from the education sector, we move to the health sector, where intern nurses and midwives have taken another stance following Ministry of Health failure to honor the presidential directive on their salary. In May and November last year, nurses were promised an increase to a tune of about 2 point something. However, the nurses say it is unfair for them to get little pay, which actually is not what was stipulated earlier. After a recent strike, they agreed with the ministry following a presidential directive which they said did not yield to their expectations and therefore have threatened a strike. There is a claim that the ministry has failed to understand the difference between intern diploma and degree holders to determine their right pay. They have set the ministry a date that is 15th of this month to ensure this is rectified or they go on strike. A letter from the Prime Minister's office shows graduated nurses and midwives are entitled to a salary of 2.4 million shillings, half the money a nurse officer is earning, of which they receive 1.5 million.
Now, away from that, we move over to court and looking at the Nyakaisiki case. Now, the Anti-Corruption Grade 1 Magistrate Court has charged the Uganda Land Commission chairperson Beatrice Nyakaisiki with 2 counts of abuse of office and obstruction of such. Now, the accused Beatrice Bwencha Nyakaisiki, who appeared in court on scratches, pledged not guilty. However, court granted her a cash bail of 4 million each with her 2 bodyguards. Now, the 4 are accused of obstructing officers from the IGG's office to carry a search in the chairperson of Uganda Land Commission office. Now, the 4 accused persons, the chairman Land Commission Beatrice Nyakaisiki, her bodyguards and police constables Police Constable Agwal Richard, Police Constable Titus Wamono, and Police Constable Edward Turiatunga have appeared before Grade 1 Anti-Corruption Court in Kololo. Nyakaisichi, who appeared in court also on clashes, was limping. She was charged with 2 counts of abuse of office and also obstruction of such. Now, she pleaded not guilty, but Nyakaisichi's lawyer Isingoma Patrick also applied for bail by presenting 5 sureties, although all the prayers were objected by the counsel for the state. That is, of course, Thomas, saying that she will interfere with investigations. We move on to our international stories.
Well, of course, now into our international stories. The first story, looking at half of Europe to be infected with Omicron within weeks. Now, World Health Organization came out to mention and also warning that half of Europe will catch the Omicron COVID variant within the next 6 to 8 weeks. Dr. Hans Klug said a west to east tidal wave of Omicron was sweeping across the region on top of a surge in the Delta variant. Now, the projection was based on the 7 million new cases reported across Europe in the first week of 2022. The number of infections has more than doubled in 2 weeks, a period. Today, the Omicron variant represents a new west to east tidal wave sweeping across the region on top of the Delta surge that all countries were managing until the late 2021. Now, crossing into Pakistan, where we see the Taliban leader killed in Afghanistan. Now, officials came out to say a senior leader of that is a Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan has been killed in eastern Afghanistan. Pakistan security officials said as a peace talk process between the armed forces group and the government remains stalled. Now, Khalid Bhatti, also known as the Nom de Gure, Muhammad Khorasan, when he was served as the spokesperson of the group, was killed in the Nangarhar province, a security source told Al Jazeera on Tuesday. Now, the official spoke on the conditions of the anonymity because he was not authorized to speak to the media about the same issue. Well, Zimbabwe to put New York Times freelance journalist on trial. Now, a freelance journalist working for the New York Times will appear in Zimbabwe court on Wednesday. His lawyer and the newspaper said in a case a critic saying illustrates the authorization nature of President Emerson Mnangagwa's government. 37-year-old Jeffrey Moyo spent 3 weeks in jail last year, accused of obtaining fake accreditation documents for 2 of the U.S. newspapers' journalists on a visit. Now, a New York Times said that the charges were baseless, that a Zimbabwe Media Commission official had issued him papers for Christina Goldman and Jao Silva. They were expelled. Where we are deeply troubled by the prosecution of Jeffrey Moyo, which appears designed to chill press freedom in Zimbabwe.
Look at the U.S. hitting 20 separate billion-dollar climate disasters in 2021, according to the NOAA report. Like, the U.S. has been battling 20 separate billion-dollar climate and weather disasters in 2021, one of the most catastrophic climate years on record, which led to at least 688 deaths. According to the annual report by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, that is NOAA, damage from the year's 20 most costly disasters, which include thousands of wildfires burning across western states, frigid temperatures and hailstorms in Texas, tornadoes in southeast, and tropical storms circulating in the east coast, totaled around 145 billion. Now, this makes 2021 the third costliest extreme weather year on record, with four tropical storms, Elsa, Fred, Ida, and Nicholas, accumulating for over half the price tag. Now, also, you look at California and Colorado's most destructive ever wildfire, which tore through almost 1,100 homes and 6,000 hectares. Well, between 44% and 56% of the country was affected by drought during the course of 2021, and overall, the U.S. saw its fourth hottest year on record, fueled by historical highs in December, looking at 10 states like Alabama, Kansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, Nebraska, New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Texas also had their warmest December on record.
Well, now, of course, having looked at the international stories, we also want to engage you on our poll question today, where we do want you to make comment about misuse, or what we call cyberbullying, or misuse of social media. But we want to find out, this is basically backed up by the most recent accusations. Now, we have seen the likes of Stella Nyanzi being taken to court, and of course now most recently the Kakwenzire case, and many others that we have seen, bloggers, people taken to social media to criticize individuals or to use their own sentiments of knowledge to define situations in the country. So I want to get it from you, like what is your opinion? What can be done to deal with this cyberbullying or computer misuse, or you can call it a social media abuse? So please take onto our social media platforms. That is on Twitter. We'll be looking at hashtag UBCGMU, and for some of you who will be able to share with us on our WhatsApp number, will be running on the screen. But also some of you who are catching us live on YouTube, be able to leave a comment for us, or an SMS through the same number of WhatsApp. But of course, what else is good happening this morning is what Uncle Bob is holding into his hands. Robert.
Well, these are the drinks that every morning I come to you to tell you that you must take them before starting your day. And for the parents, ensure that as your child was reporting back, at least there is a carton of Hallelujah Reflexology products, Hallelujah Turmeric drink and Hallelujah Ginger tea. These will do you great. They boost your immune system, which is very important, so that your body has capacity to fight off a number of diseases. And there is assurance and guarantee to them because they have been certified by the Uganda National Bureau of Standards, and they have the Q mark. So just any nearby shop, any nearby retail, go and purchase yourself a bottle at only 1,500.
Well, of course, at this point also we want to encourage you and of course energize you as you do start your day. Now we do also give you our song for the day, which is meant to encourage you, help you kickstart your day, probably with much motivation, of course, as a team here. Good morning, Uganda. Now let's take a break, have our song for the day. When we come back, we'll be looking at newsreel. Good morning. particularly look at some of these issues is what we call bad physical planning. That's a matter of fact. One of the major causes, and if you want to take a case study again of Kampala, that is the major cause, not the border. Not that borders should be, but that is the major. Why? Because you have in this city buildings that don't have parkings. So where, for example, you have an arcade, I don't want to mention a name, but let's say you have an arcade called Kirabo Arcade that has about 7 stories, but has no parking. That during day transactions, it accommodates over 7,000 people. Let's imagine 1,000 of those drive. Where are their cars? I think that's why I'm asking, what are we trying to remedy? When you talk about order, just order, it is not qualified. That's what I'm saying, unless you're telling me that order is also defined in the sense of the week. You get the point. City trade order vis-a-vis congestion does not directly lead to vendors and borders. We need to solve that problem. That's a matter of fact. But is that the biggest problem that is causing congestion? Let's be honest.
Mollen, Felix talks about a bigger picture. But of course, we've seen conflict, one, between people that have shops in the city, saying we are paying taxes, we are paying rent, and these are people that are selling exactly what we are selling, and they are putting it on the streets. We've had people complaining over theft because of this congestion on the streets. We've had sometimes even could have been avoidable accidents, but because of these congestions, we are seeing borders here, then there are merchandise here, you're moving, you're stepping, this and this, and the authority believes that now is the right time, because this was also escalated by COVID-19, where some people's jobs were lost and they resorted to the streets, said, well, let's take merchandise. Those that were working, some that were working bars, other restaurants, and some said, no, this is a safe haven. So it is the time now to ensure that these people vacate.
Well, Robert, if you ask me, I think this is a smart move, and I don't agree with Felix when he says this is something that is not in order.
Targeting the weak first.
Yes, this is a really smart move and something that should have happened. I have been privileged to be in big cities, like, you know, the likes of Amsterdam, Paris. You look at what they do within the cities. They have gazetted areas where certain activities, you know, are supposed to be or supposed to stop, like borders. They have lanes where they should go to. Now, KCCA has given alternatives. It's not like they're chasing these guys over, you know, off the streets with no alternatives. They are gazetted areas. If you look at Kampala, we have markets that were put across, more than 17, and the stalls are empty. You look at, for example, Usafi markets. Those stalls are empty. So they are giving alternatives for these guys to actually have, you know, stalls in these gazetted areas. So that is going to provide room for a smart city. And this is the target. This is something that we should also be thankful that we are getting. Now, you also look at the issue of having congestion over the shops, because you have the vendors cutting across, then you have people in the malls, like you mentioned, selling the same stuff. But because not everyone is going to come into the city center. Now, if I know there is this gazetted area where stuff like this is being sold, that's where I'll go if I want to avoid, you know, going to the malls. So I think it is a smart way to also make sure that there is that kind of order. And if you look at the ordinance of 2021 that they are now moving forward, they have stipulated how this can be done. You know, and it's going to give more room for more smart infrastructure within the city. We don't have automated systems within the city, and this is something that should be done. Now, getting vendors off the street, you're providing more room for stuff like that in the city. You're having most of those automated systems. Now, we cannot wait, and just because, you know, we don't want to inconvenience a few people, we're keeping our city in the back. We are putting our city in the 90s. No, cities are moving forward, and this is a smart plan. Have gazetted areas where, you know, you look at, if you've moved in Kampala in evenings, you will find the people selling mangoes, you know, everywhere. And this just doesn't look smart. But if you have these guys in gazetted areas, because they are markets, the likes of Nakasero markets, they are still selling the same things, but why are other people also coming into the streets in front of banks and wherever selling, stuff like that? So if these guys are taken off the streets, we are going to have a smart city, and this is where we should
allow me to bring in Felix here. You've talked about relocating these people, and when you speak, you make it sound very automatic, that the markets are there, therefore they should shift and go to these markets. Mollen, for the last 7 years, KCCA and KCC, Kampala City Council, have urged traders to go to these markets, the so-called vendors. Actually, some of the vendors were in these markets and they decided to come to the streets. One, there is sub-renting in these markets. So to a person who has a capital of about 20,000, you're telling them to go to a store. How much are they going to be paying? That is one. Two, much as these markets are readily and seemingly available, some of them you'll find that accessibility to them. Take an instance of Wandegea market. One would tell you government invested billions of money. When you go to this market, you're going to ask yourself, is this a market? But you see, I think this is a problem with... Are we addressing the person? The plan of relocation, is it suiting them? You talk about $1 billion multi-structure market, and you find offices, you find big shops, but this is an area you're focusing to locate a person who has been selling a future parties and tea along the street and they're getting clients. But for me, I think the challenge is on the fact that it has not been stipulated. So you mentioned, you gave a good example of Wandegea market that is there, and really organized when you look at the stalls in there. So the fact that people did not know that, this is the only place. Now, if you take off the merchandise off the street, then there is only one place you can get whatever you want, and that's the market, and you will not avoid it. Felix, I need your comment on this relocation, because it's seeming that let them go. We have Usafi, we have this. We are even seeking for more money to construct other markets. But even the few you're having, the vendors are not going there. When people talk about vendors, I don't know, probably my sister Mollen, I don't know, she knows who vendors are. Probably flashes the ideal picture. But a vendor is a person who has probably about working capital. If they are very fine, it's 50,000. Yeah. I don't know when you say, I don't know if you've bothered to find out the amount charged for every stall. Let's talk about Usafi, first and foremost. Secondly, the reason why these people are on the streets, and again, I want to be categorical, clear that I am not supporting people to be here. But, and Robert said it in his preamble, that why do you think they keep coming, even when they know the risks? One, you must appreciate the situation of Uganda. And this is for me the problem. Sometimes you're between a very hard place and a rock. Look at, in addition to the very poor country like Uganda, look at the COVID effect. The people you see, some of them on the streets, were in arcades. Yes. But because of what happened, because of the failure of government to intervene in how landlords were costing them for months where they weren't working, in how banks have exorbitantly charged them on, because of the failures, various failures by the way of government institutions to come in and play as a mediator. Actually, Felix, most of them have because even when you look at statistics, they indicate that there was a tremendous increase. Absolutely, in numbers of vendors. In numbers of vendors, because during this period of COVID-19. And these people were the ones in the arcades. The shoes you see, they had shops, but because of the very, I don't know what to use. Just a case in point, you find a very expensive car, someone has parked it on the street, it's full of merchandise. You get it? Selling eggs, but selling this is what they had in the shop, they have now brought it in their private car. This is what also the city authority is talking about. When you look at the congestion downtown and on the streets, I think this is something that can be avoided. We are not saying that it's expensive for them to go into. The agenda that we should be pushing for is making sure that in these markets the stalls are at a cost that is affordable by these vendors, instead of us claiming to say that they cannot afford. Because they don't even want to check the options. Felix was driving to some point. It's not only affordability. When you're giving an alternative to someone, it should be closer to maybe what they were doing previously. You have a market like Usafi. Let's use Usafi that government KCCA are cherishing. Go to Usafi. Have you ever noticed how inaccessible this area is? How less marketable?
What do you mean inaccessible? What do you mean inaccessible?
I mean, how many people compared Usafi to Nakasero market? Compare Usafi to Nakawa market. You get it? Deep there. Let's go to Wandegea market.
Let's ask. No, let me just give you a simple example. Mollen, can you walk from UBC to go and buy a Changwe in Usafi?
But you see,
would you? No, would you?
Why would I go to Usafi if there is a market nearby? Now the targets. The target customers should not have to move. I shouldn't have to move from Wandegea to Usafi because there is a market there as well. So it's just a matter of which place is closer to you. So anyway, you don't have to say just Robert, because Usafi is far from you. There are a lot of people coming from Entebbe Road, coming from all these areas that easily access Usafi.
For me not to
I don't
get
have to
lost
move up there.
in away from the actual concept of our discussion. I'll say this. If you're talking about city order, as I told you, and for me, I stand by my opinion, vendors are victims today, or border borders will be victims because they are easy to enforce against. First of all, they are poor. Okay? It is easy. You can enforce. You see, a poor person is easy to govern.
Definitely.
Because they are vulnerable.
Very vulnerable.
You know, you throw around. We have seen these things. We remember a lady who died here in one of those rainy days and what, you understand. So I think that is one of the reasons. It is easier to start with them. But I want to see KCCA talk about city trade order and also talk about buildings that have no parkings, buildings that have been built in roads. And between you and me, you know,
some on top of water hydrants.
But you see, when there is more space
Felix,
in the city, when there is more space, this
Felix,
can be
please
done.
drive your point home.
No, for me, lastly, let me just say that if you're talking about trade order, actually, the people you're complaining about, the vendors, do not cause even 10% of that disorganization of trade order. It is the actual physical planning methodology that should be dealt with. Create the right spaces. You build non-motorized routes. Then you give them away to vendors. The corruption in KCCA, who's talking about it? These people are there because they pay to be there. It is known. They even can tell the people we pay to. They collect money in the morning, midday, and evening. So the issue is not it is corruption that causes most of these issues. That is my opinion.
Mollen, your final remarks.
Well, while we talk about city order, I think we should also remember that this is being put into law, and so far they have talked about penalties. And if you found defiling what has been put in place, you can be sentenced to 1 year of imprisonment or give a fine of 10 million Ugandan shillings. So these guys this is what has been put there. Or, at a judge's discretion, court's discretion, you can be given community service. So we are also looking at such issues. So this is something that can be avoided if they follow the guideline of how things are going to look like. So I think that let's take this as a smart move and a smooth move. We are not saying these guys are vulnerable just because they are vulnerable, that's why they're targeting them. No, we are looking at the interests of the city. The spaces and all that we're talking about can be created once we have that kind of order, once we have vendors off the streets. I think it is a smart move. Regardless, there is going to be people that won't be comfortable with it. But when we get there, and these are issues that we've been dealing with in Uganda. You remember when Jennifer Musisi actually started up with cleaning out the city. There was a lot of congestion in the city. But when she started on that, everyone was complaining. But once it was enforced, we now have a smart city. And I think that is something that we should be looking ahead to instead of looking at who it is inconveniencing right now.
Well said, both views, Felix and Mollen there. But it's very important that we must have a clean, orderly city. However, and I want to emphasize this, we must factor in all people as their source of income. If we are to plan relocation methods, let's ensure they are friendly and include or involve the actual people we are targeting. It's not all about the technical staff, technocrats sitting there. Understand what is best for those people in their opinion and how best do you suit or fit in to give them a better alternative. When of course, we'll also look at some of those coming in from our poll question this morning, and we'll look at that later. But as for now, let's move and give you a feel of what is trending in the print media. Good morning.
After money with Airtel Money. 1.5 billion shillings in cash prizes up for grabs.
I'm Sendi Kajuamati, a student of Chambogo University. I've been a lucky winner of 10 million Ugandan shillings, and I'm really excited as I'm ending this year with all that lots of money. Guys, it's real. Just dial *185.
The more you transact, the higher your chances of winning. Airtel Money. Instant, secure, borderless.
When you talk about our motherland Uganda, the pearl of Africa, you cannot fail to smile because of the smile that fills the faces of the citizens. Our nice good weather and nature that sustains us all, that enables us all to continue each in their own way, because we are all different even according to each individual's work. But what joins us to become one person is the sweetness from the flavored drink Hallelujah Jingati drink and Hallelujah Tamarind drink. The flavor that quenches your thirst while at the same time treating and healing your body because it is 100% natural. Enjoy the drink that has got the tamarind juice in it. Made by Hallelujah Reflexology, Healthy Solutions and Nutritional Research Center Limited. Get yourself a bottle of Hallelujah from all shops around.
Enjoy convenience today with Airtel Money School Pay, FlexiPay or Bridge Schools. To pay school fees using Airtel Money for Bridge Schools, dial *185#. Select option 6, School Fees. Select option 1, Bridge Schools. Enter pupil ID. Enter the amount. Enter the PIN number to complete payment. Pay school fees conveniently using Airtel Money. Airtel Money. Instant, secure, borderless.
Mohamed Salah, Naby Keita, Kalidou Koulibaly, Sadio Mane, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. When you hear these names, you may think you're probably watching the English Premier League or UEFA Champions League, but it's none of those. It's the 2021 Total Energies Africa Cup of Nations from 9th January to February 6th, 2022. All these global elite football stars will be in Cameroon to grace the continent's most prestigious sporting event. 52 games, 24 countries, 1 continent, 1 trophy, 1 station, live, free and exclusive to your public broadcaster. UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Enjoy convenience today with Airtel Money School Pay, FlexiPay or Bridge Schools. To pay school fees using FlexiPay, dial *185#. Select option 6, School Fees. Select option 3, FlexiPay. Enter the school code. Enter the student number. Enter the amount. Enter the PIN number to complete payment. Pay school fees conveniently using Airtel Money. Airtel Money. Instant, secure, borderless.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Ensuring that you're well versed with what you need to know as you kickstart your day is our mandate here every morning. Local, international, you can trust us on that you will be an informed person throughout the day because you made the best choice. So every weekday, make sure you're with us from 6:30 till the hour of 9 because that is our mandate to you. And in that spirit, we now look at what is trending in the print media this morning. The New Vision, UNEP to use new curriculum to set exams. How abridged curriculum will work. The New Vision gives you that. But also 22 bodies exhumed at Soroti University. Details are in the Vision. And looking at politics, that is FDC, NOP, DP speak out on MP electing, that is the president. This was a move orchestrated by some members of NRM. Then oil news, we have 4.2 trillion oil deals reserved for Ugandans. Wow, that is a big share in the national oil there. And how to integrate teen mothers in schools. Still, hot topic there. Road toll express highway collects 250 million in 3 days.
Well, of course, the Daily Monitor, students stranded as schools fail to reopen. Now, hundreds of learners across the country are unable to resume studies after their schools, mostly private-owned, were closed. Now, Land Commission chairperson charged in court and, of course, given bail thereafter. But Kapwenza sneaked into court, charged and remanded. Now, NSSF savers to get money on phone. And of course, the Lizard asks, will there be withdrawal charges? But of course, also inside the papers, DPP withdraws case against Bobby Wine, that is for admission at Makerere and half of Europe to catch Omicron, says the World Health Organization. Now, today in history, Uganda osts Sultan of Zanzibar, and massive earthquake strikes Haiti, that is in 1908.
Back to the new vision, we start with the COVID-19 tracker, where new confirmed cases stand at 749. We look at positivity rate, it is 11.2%, and new death, 4 people have succumbed to COVID-19. We look at total death registered in Uganda, that is 3,361. Today in history, it was on this very date, January 12th, but the year 1988, when Kenya farm loaded Uganda's bond of fuel, and still on the same date, but the year 1999, snow fell in Jerusalem. Parenting, well, how can we teach our children about culture? A big question there. And my husband uses foreign language in front of our kids.
Well, in sports, Eagles rule Egypt. There where we saw the game against Egypt, and of course how they were put to humble Egypt there, 0, and Nigeria 1, Sierra Leone 0, Algeria 0. Now, baby cricket cranes, coach searches for contributions, and UPL boys day out in Turkey. Now, how Giants arrested early season score, and Eagles dwell in limbo. That, of course, still much in sports. But of course, in relation to sports, we don't tire to remind you that UBC has taken up the duty of bringing games live onto your screen. All the AFCON games, catch them live on UBC. Now, of course, with the most relevant and, of course, tactical commentary by some of the best sports commentators and anchors in the land. Also, be able not to forget on all our channels now, of course, our radio networks and all our TV channels. Those include Magic, UBC, Star TV, and U24. Robert,
in the Vision Sports, it's all about the Nation Cup here, and they give you more how the table is standing, who is playing today, what time, all the games, more details with that. But also don't forget that Ruben will be here to give you all the highlights in the world of sports, all those catchy, interesting stories there. So for the sports lovers, Ruben is ready and is cooking, preparing a very heavy meal for you there.
Now in the Daily Nation, Raila map blue, red and green poll zone. There where we also see former Prime Minister recently unveiled campaigns team has started its work. But of course also big blow to Mudavadi's as another MP jumps ship. Naruto cracks the whip on UDA. That is ticket hopefuls. Well, of course, they give you much of the insights of what is happening as they do also gear up to their election date. But of course, it's about that time where we also take you through traffic updates now for you, what to look out for when you are on the road. And that will be done by Mollen, Kenyena. I don't know where she's going to get us from to where. Mollen.
Well, we are going to start off with Kampala Road, which seems to be one of those roads where it gets to be having a little bit of more traffic compared to the rest of the roads close to it. So this is one that you want to be keen about and know how the traffic is looking like. And we're going to start it off looking at, closing off from Kampala Jinja Highway into the city center. Now you take a look at the fact that most of the roads that do join into Kampala Road also contribute to the fact that there's going to be a little bit of traffic. But also you look at that road that is coming through from the Nakawa side, that is joining into Jinja Road. That is also looking quite clear for this morning in green line there. But no, mostly for the cars that are going away from the city. Now the road is quite clear, but those entering the city, there is a little bit of traffic as you head into, approaching some of the roads. That is Station Approach Road towards Leiri there. That is where there is a little bit of traffic. Now it continues through as you look at Kampala Road as well. Now for the vehicles that are also leaving town, it's quite clear, but there is more traffic as you head into the city. So you look at the alternatives that you have if you want to avoid much of that traffic. Now you look at the lanes ahead going through the King George also highway. You look at that road actually being quite clear, and that joins into Parliamentary Avenue, which seems to be having a little bit of clear traffic. So if you want to avoid going through from Ginger Road up to Kampala Road, you can take that shortcut through the Parliamentary Avenue, and that will lead you quite well into the city. Now there is a little bit of traffic that also joins in though across Parliamentary Avenue, and that is for also the cars that are heading into the city, but that's just for a short distance, so it should be able to clear as you head back into Kampala Road if you're still going to have to be on that road. Now where you see the green lines, that's where we're looking at quite clear traffic. But also as you move through along Kampala Road, still quite clear traffic this morning for most of the areas. And also you look at the roads that are joining in. You look at that junction from Entebbe Road joining into Kampala Road, quite clear for this morning. Just a little bit of traffic, but that is as you joining the road, so that doesn't take away much of your time. It is still quite okay to take that road. Now we also dive and look into Entebbe Road this morning. It's quite looking at some clear traffic, but as you connect through Nasa Road, that road seems to have a little bit of traffic, and I think that has a lot to do with the trade that is going on around Nasa Road that keeps a little bit of traffic over there. And also the Market Square Road that joins into Entebbe Road, that one is one you should avoid this morning. It seems to be having a lot of traffic. Unless you have business at that side, you really don't have to be on that road. You can just keep it to Entebbe Road or some of the roads that are actually above. You look at Luwumu Street, that area is quite clear compared to the Market Street Road, which is having a little bit of traffic. Now back on Kampala Road, still there is quite a bit of traffic still as you also connect towards Speak Road. Now this is one area where you see even the vehicles that are leaving town and those joining town are also stuck in that kind of traffic. Now the alternative would be Speak Road, but as we speak right now, there's also a little bit of traffic on that road, so it's all going to look like there is a bit of traffic. Now the only challenge with this is that at least with Speak Road, this is just a small distance. You can still move through and avoid the much of the traffic on Kampala Road. And also Speak Road does join into some of the other roads that are looking clear this morning. You look at Shimon Road, that road is quite clear, so you could move through that, and then if you headed out of the city, maybe towards Bombo Road, this is one that you could actually go for. And then you also look at Speak Road, that is after that roundabout, the sideward Mutesa. So that is also quite clear for this morning and can provide an alternative if you're leaving town and you want to avoid Kampala Road. But you also look at that lane that is joining into the city square, and also to that roundabout coming over, joined by Lumumba Avenue. That road seems to be clear. Now the roundabout is also not bad in terms of traffic, except for that coming from Taman Avenue. There's a little bit of traffic, but that's just a small distance. It will take away a few minutes of your time, but that is not much to actually keep your day stuck. Now you also look at that lane above, that is Buganda Road as well. It's having quite clear traffic for those leaving the city. Now those joining the city through Buganda Road, there is a little bit of traffic, but again not as much as the one that you could find further on Kampala Road. So that is one to avoid if you also heading into town, because now the Kampala Road actually for vehicles heading into town is quite clear except for those joining in. Now you also look at some of the alternatives that you have still across the city square there. Above you have Buganda Road that is actually quite clear, but also that George Street is looking quite clear for this morning, so that can be one that you can take, especially if you're heading further uptown and you don't have to deal with Kampala Road, a little bit of traffic. Now also the advantage with Kampala Road is that traffic is actually moving, so if you can't avoid it, it's not that bad. It's just a small distance, there is a little bit of traffic, and then after that it clears off, so that is not that bad. Now Uganda Road clears up as you head further away towards Bombo Road. That road seems to be quite clear. Also Kampala Road as you head towards Bombo Road is quite clear. And you also look at some of the traffic that now starts to build up, that is around that lane that connects to Chagwe Road. Now we do have a little bit of traffic as you're moving away from Kampala Road towards Chagwe Road, but that is just up to that distance between Kampala Road and Buganda Road is where we have a little bit of traffic. But those joining in, the traffic is quite clear, and that can be okay to join in from there. But Kampala Road again gets worse. There is much traffic as you head into Bombo Road. Now look into Bombo Road, which seems to be quite clear for this morning. Once you join that road, it seems to be moving, and little further still we're looking at quite clear traffic. So this is not that bad for this morning. The vehicles are moving, and this is a good alternative if you're also heading into town. You can count on the fact that the traffic is a little bit okay. Now that connection also from William Street seems to be quite okay, joining Bombo Road, and that is one that you can actually also take if you're heading to for business downtown. You could also take that William Street, which seems to be quite okay for this morning. And also some of the streets that are actually joining into Bombo Road seem to be quite clear. Now we want to leave traffic at that and take a look into what the weather is looking like across the country and the forecast that we have for this morning. But I will start off with what is making headlines. Now we've been continuing with a story on the analysis of 2021 in terms of extreme weather and how we're looking like, especially with the warming trend. Now we're talking about global warming, but one thing that we also want to be clear about and look into is how the oceans are warming. Now oceans are very well known to be one of those areas that do trap heat for us, and also one of the places where we have most of the emissions actually being trapped. Now with the global rise in temperatures, we are looking at mostly a lot of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. Now oceans do act as sinks for these gases, and also to keep the temperatures in check. But for the last 5 years, the report that did come out yesterday, it shows that we have had oceans warming, and 5 consecutive years of warmth within the oceans is not looking good. And 2021 is third in those years, looking at the temperatures that now have been analyzed. What are the implications of this? It means that, because you see with oceans, it does help, carry that wave of warmth that influences the development of, the cyclones, the typhoons that we see, and the worst hit places, especially when it comes to typhoons. You look at areas of Philippines where we've had a lot of death due to some of the systems that start from the oceans. So whenever there is that kind of rise in temperatures on the oceans, then we can expect most cyclones and worst hit also for the US, most of areas that are around the oceans. The Caribbean, you look at the islands that have been worst hit. The Fiji right now is looking at recovery of years and years, and this is something that is likely to continue, and scientists are worried that if we keep up on this trend of warming across oceans, we could be looking at more of those events, and this is something that will distract everyday lives, and we could also lose some of the islands that do live in between the oceans. Giving an example of Fiji, there is that tropical cyclone that we had back in 2018 that almost claimed the entire island. So this is something that should be worrying when we talk about global warming. Even the places that are supposed to help with reducing that global warming are now warming up, and specifically looking at oceans. You also look at the fact that we also get here in Uganda, we get effects from the oceans, like Indian Ocean and Atlantic Oceans, because that is where our weather systems actually developed from. And so when you have this kind of warming, and there's a time we also had cyclones closer to East Africa, the one that did claim lives in Mozambique, also taking in areas of Malawi, Zimbabwe, brought devastating effects there. People lost their lives, destruction, And also, that's the time we also had a lot of rains across Uganda. That for the first time, we saw a cyclone come that closer. So that is what we could be looking at if these oceans keep warming. That means there will be development of more of those cyclones, which will in turn affect our daily weather. And also, you look at, for example, when you talk about the Atlantic Ocean warming, we're looking at more events coming in through, especially for South Africa. And usually that also affects the weather that is experienced, especially across Western Uganda. So the reports that are coming through for 2021 are not looking good. And unfortunately, also the forecast shows that this warming trend will continue for the oceans. And what is worrying is what could happen after this goes forward, especially in terms of warming. Now, in other news, we also look at the heat wave that has been forecast across Australia, and this is something that did come through by Monday and Tuesday, still looking at the temperatures above 40. Now, for the very first time this year, we're looking at temperatures that are going above 40 across Australia, and this is something that is already alerting authorities. There has been restrictions that were made, especially for areas where temperatures are likely to go up to, the 44. And those areas have already been cordoned off to make sure that people are aware that there is a heat wave and this is something that they cannot deal with. Now, most of the areas that were ranked maximum, looking at what came through by 10th of January 2021, we have San Antonio, and that was looking at 42.8 degrees Celsius. Now, this is something that is really above the ordinary. We've never had a 40 here in Uganda. I don't know any area that did have 40 degrees Celsius. Now that is how much extent the heat wave can. Now this is one that could cause fainting just out of the blue. Someone would be standing and they faint with this kind of temperature. This is why it is, a national alert and coming through to warn people of what is likely to happen, especially for areas that are being forecast to actually have temperatures going into 42. You look at River Davia, which is also likely to go up to 42.5 degrees Celsius. Now, the forecast is still continuing, and most of the people being alerted of this heat wave to avert the crisis. Now, we talk about issues of heat waves and extreme weather droughts. This is all coming in as a result of the global warming that is now worrying people on the frequency of how this is hitting everywhere in the world. Because while the other part of the country is dealing with heat waves, you will have flooding somewhere else, you will have droughts somewhere else, and this is something that is now causing an alarm to scientists, and to go back to the drawing board and even continue with what has been put across, especially the pacts that we have right now. The agreement that we have that is working is the Glasgow Pact that did come out in November. How much has been followed up to make sure that we avoid most of these extreme weather events is still the question, even to all governments, because we all did commit to make sure that we keep temperatures below 1.5 degrees Celsius, but that doesn't seem to be the case across most places. But anyway, away from that, we want to take a look at the weather that is going on across the country, and that is coming in from the satellites above Uganda, showing us what is happening right this time. Now you look at most of the areas really in grey color. That means open skies across most areas within Kampala, as well as Western Uganda, across the Lake Victoria Basin. Almost everywhere in the country right now we're dealing with mostly sunny conditions. We do have a little bit of intervals of cloudy conditions, especially for the western part of Lake Victoria, but it seems like most of those will be clearing away, and we would also be headed for quite a sunny day. Now, most of the rainy systems are still quite far. You look at parts of Congo where there is that deep red color. Loja and Kindu right now dealing with most of rainy conditions, and that could be really a heavy system in the deep red colors that could even lead to flash flooding along that area. You look at Kisangani as well, Lubutu, that is across Congo. That is where the rainy system is for this morning, and looks like that might not be headed our way anytime soon. Except that we might have a little bit of effect later in the afternoon. That is only for the areas around Lake Victoria. Maybe that could bring in a little bit of rains, but that is later in the evening. Also for Midwestern Uganda, I look at some of the systems that might start developing across areas of Kasese, but for now it looks like it is a pleasant morning, and not so pleasant for areas where it's quite sunny. You look at areas of northern Uganda, Karamoja, Gulu, that area has been having mostly dry weather, and that seems to be be continuing for that region. Could be looking at uncomfortable temperatures, with temperatures going up to 34 degrees later in the evening, and that can be really quite high. Now here in Kampala, most of our maximum temperatures do go up to 30, and that already feels uncomfortable and hot. Now imagine a 34 to 35 across northern Uganda. That will be quite hot for that area, but that is what is in the forecast for most of the areas across northern Uganda. Now the southern sector might have temperatures a little bit down, but still they will be warmer than what we have been used to, warmer than what is normal for us. And also, contrary to what we had yesterday, we're going to have quite a warm day across most areas within the country today. But we are starting off quite well with just mostly sunny weather and a mix of cloudy conditions. But later in the afternoon, we could see some changes, especially like I mentioned earlier, the Lake Victoria Basin and a little bit of a few areas within Midwestern Uganda. But I want to leave you at that in terms of weather. We do have Good Morning Uganda agenda coming up, and Robert will be here to take you through that. Later we'll have sports, and Ruben will also be here talking more about AFCON and also the analysis of the games that we've had so far. But you can count on the fact that UBC is streaming all those games live here. All you need to do is just keep it to UBC. Well, my name is Mollen Kenyena. I want to wish you a wonderful morning.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
The Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, in partnership with the International Growth Center (IGC) and UK Aid, will host the 5th Economic Growth Forum on the 13th of January 2022 under the theme Economic Resilience, Recovery and Resurgent Growth. The forum will reflect on the state of Uganda's economy during the COVID-19 pandemic and suggest measures for resurgent growth while remaining mindful of the environmental sustainability. Speakers at the forum will particularly examine the instruments Uganda can apply to protect the economy against global shocks, global trade in pandemic times and its implications for Uganda, policy means of encouraging inclusive growth, as well as the global perspective and domestic outlook on different energy options. Proposals from the forum will inform short, medium and long-term interventions required for economic recovery and growth to enable Uganda achieve middle income status. The keynote speakers at